They arrived in August 1942 to the small, isolated village of Castiner, deep in Puerto Rico's rugged central mountains. A group of men conscientiously opposed to war, instead performing alternative service, the job of helping the people of Puerto Rico. Once they arrived, that small village and the surrounding area would never be the same. John Forbes was among the CPSers to Puerto Rico.
Brethren Impact has been to show people what Christian service really means and how it affects all the different areas of life and how a person's direction in life can be changed so that he reflects in his being the presence of Jesus Christ.
Officially, the early Brethren efforts were to establish a medical clinic for the people of Castiner, but from those efforts grew a whole series of social services, health ministries, churches, schools, a retirement complex, and a deep-seated attitude that caring about the quality of life is part of what it means to be a Christian. That idea was new to a young nurse at the Castiner Hospital in the 1940s who later married one of the Brethren workers.
The brother style, the most thing that appealed to me is that they lived a life that went right along with the teachings of Jesus Christ. I think that was the thing that impressed me the most.
While solely a CPS camp at the outset, Puerto Rico became a major mission point for the Church of the Brethren for several decades. Hundreds of volunteers came here to work in what evolved into Castiner Hospital, the first rural hospital anywhere on the island of Puerto Rico.
Without the hospital, I don't think the community would be much today.
Violet Crispo came to the hospital as a nurse in 1949.
It was an important thing in the community, and they knew it, and it gave work to more people than anything else.
The hospital also significantly improved the health of the people of the Castiner area. Castiner native Ophelia Rodriguez worked in the hospital for some 30 years.
Before, when the hospital started, the health was very poor here, and many sickness.
The staff often relied on ingenuity and managed on meager resources. CPSer George Mason is credited with making an X-ray machine essentially out of junk parts. But somehow the volunteers and the staff kept it going.
They did most everything. What one didn't know how to do, the other did. When they came down, it was to do every kind of doctoring. There wasn't any real specialty in anybody way back.
Elsa Groff was director of nursing at Castiner Hospital for 27 years. The hospital has moved twice so far, from the original Army barracks to another set of barracks in 1949 to the current modern complex in the middle of Castiner in the late 1950s. Walking through the old hospital grounds evokes memories of a far more primitive era.
The surgery was there in that area and delivery room. And in that time, we did all kinds of surgeries. We did C-sections, appendectomies, and we had all kinds of other minor surgeries, no problem at all, gallbladder surgery. And one remarkable thing, that for being an old hospital, and we never had any infections. So I don't know whether it was God protecting us or whether it was that we're so conscious that we have to be so much cleaner because of the surrounding that we were extra careful.
Today, the Castiner Hospital provides high-quality medical care to people from a wide area of central Puerto Rico. Though a local hospital board was formed in the late 70s, ownership of the hospital was officially transferred in 1989 from the Church of the Brethren to a community board of directors. Despite that transfer of ownership, the ties are still strong between the hospital and the church through a liaison relationship with the Association of Brethren Caregivers, which sponsors volunteers from other Brethren congregations outside Puerto Rico. The volunteers help out with a variety of tasks. This group of men spent 2 weeks painting and performing maintenance at the hospital grounds. Before they left, they were honored by the hospital's board of directors.
The board understands that the hospital is not only part of the church, not only part of the community. The hospital is part of all of us. And everyone wants that the hospital go ahead and that the hospital go ahead providing the service that the people in the community need.
Some volunteers, like Berdine Stauffer Benachea, decided to stay here in Castiner. Berdine was a Brethren volunteer service worker who stayed here to work in the hospital's lab. Through the years, the hospital has been the focal point of Brethren involvement in Puerto Rico. For many years, it was headed by Brethren doctors, people such as Homer Burke, the longtime medical director of the hospital. But early on, the people of Castiner strongly supported the hospital, especially during the construction of the current building. Much of the community helped.
We really felt that unity of the whole community in backing up the hospital, because even the people that at that time were making not very good wages, I think it was about $1 a day, they were giving from 25 to 50 to sometimes even $1 a week toward the construction of the hospital. And to me, that was a great sacrifice, because they wanted the hospital. That was a way for them to say, that's our hospital and we want it to be finished.
Alberto Gonzalez remembers helping with the construction of the hospital as a young child, although he admits part of the reason he showed up were the treats that Margaret Burke would give the children.
Whoever come over her place, she gave cake, cookies, and juice. Also, she was the first one to collect clothes and shoes, and she gave them to the poor people here in Castiner.
It wasn't long before a wide variety of ministries were associated with the hospital: preventative health education, social workers, even credit unions. This office, which now provides help with a whole range of government social services, is an outgrowth of some of the programs begun years ago through the hospital. Another outgrowth of Brethren involvement in Castiner is this high school. More than 90% of all its graduates go on to college or programs of further study. Yet it had its beginnings with the Brethren efforts in the 1940s.
There was no high school here, so the Brethren started the Brethren Academy until they proved to the government that a high school was needed here.
It was staffed mostly by Brethren volunteers.
There is no way any child, any of these people in the whole hill country here could have an education. The closest high school was in Adjuntas, and at that time there was no transportation where they could go back and forth. So the academy was a great step in helping to lift the possibilities for the youth.
Before long, the people of Castiner became interested in starting a Brethren church. It started first with a Sunday school and eventually grew into a congregation.
The people from Castiner were the ones that formed it. It wasn't, they were the ones that joined it and added and went visiting people and reading the Bible with them.
Homer Burke was the first pastor of the church and baptized new members in outdoor streams. Today, the churches of Puerto Rico reflect that compulsive desire to share the gospel as a central part of their Christian life.
We, the Puerto Ricans, feel that we need to preach the Word of God, tell people the good news. That's why we had so many people involved in evangelism in Puerto Rico. Almost every Puerto Rican feel that he or she is a missionary.
What began in the 1940s as one church has since grown to nearly a dozen Church of the Brethren congregations and new church starts in Puerto Rico. Several of them started by the Brethren at Castiner, including this congregation, which worships in a small building on the side of a steep mountain near Rio Prieto. It was formed in the 1960s by members of the Castiner Church. A more recent congregation at nearby Yohuecas is pastored by a man who grew up in the Castiner Church.
The Church of the Brethren is a special church. Most of the church here are interested only in one side, to have many people in the church. But in Church of the Brethren, we're interested not only to have so many members, but also to help. And that's agree with my style of way to serve others.
One of the problems in the Yawekis community is the high rate of alcoholism. The congregation here is working with a program to minister to both the spiritual needs and the health needs of alcoholics. At Vega Baja, a large congregation meets in a modern building. They gather weekly for a Wednesday evening Bible study, which concludes some 3 hours later with a lively period of singing and prayer. Many of the newer churches in Puerto Rico start out in temporary facilities until a building can be located. The new congregation in the Levittown area of San Juan met in a carport for almost a year before moving to this building a few blocks from the beach. It was a congregation that decided to join the Church of the Brethren after their co-pastor learned to know Pedro Bruel.
When I asked him if he wanted to be the pastor of the Vega Baja Church, he just told me, I'm starting a new church in my car porch. And I visit him, and he's growing in 2 years from 0 to maybe 80, 90, 100 people every Sunday morning.
Another area of evangelism for Puerto Rican brethren has been the nearby Dominican Republic, where a series of congregations have been started, some of them in small, isolated villages, with the help of the Puerto Rican brethren. Evangelism continues to be a major thrust of the churches in Puerto Rico, but the brethren's service ethic that has been demonstrated at Castiner is nearly always present as well. It's lived out in the neighborhood around the Caimito congregation in the economically depressed area of San Juan. The church operates a community center for people in the neighborhood, offering meals to neighborhood children, facilities for dental and medical care, and programs like 4-H for the youth of the community.
It is very easy to preach with the Bible, so you better preach with the Bible, but do something for the community, because we have many communities that are suffering a lot, and we have to care.
Not far from the center is a steep incline which leads to a section of the neighborhood called The Hole. Here, more than 27,000 people live in severe poverty.
They have nothing, and the families are very poor. You know, it is the poorest area in this community, and we have to give them something.
The residents here see the brethren as people who care about them. The community center runs Bible school classes in the neighborhood. It coordinated the construction of this basketball court, and through the Brethren Disaster Response Program organized the repair of more than 50 homes, which were leveled by Hurricane Hugo in 1989. It's
a good example of Brethrenism in action, although the church just became Brethren in the last few years. But the pastor felt that there was such an identity between what he was doing and the ideas of the Church of the Brethren that he felt it was necessary to join.
The church, myself and everybody who want and to have a compromise, have to do something, to preach the gospel, to help them in every manner, and to love them. And that's what I'm trying to do, to love them and show them the love of the Lord through our services.
Caring about people and identifying with them regardless of their circumstances is a major part of how the Puerto Rican brethren interpret being a follower of Christ. That same philosophy guides a program on the small island of Culebra, a short ferry ride from the main island of Puerto Rico. There, former Brethren volunteer service workers Bob and Marty Kaufman run a center for physically handicapped children and those with emotional handicaps. The Kaufmans and volunteer staff provide one-on-one attention.
The lack of employment here just doesn't allow people to have much opportunity to give the stimulation to the kids that they need.
Each summer, the Association of Brethren Caregivers sponsors a work camp for brethren from the mainland.
They take the kids to the beach and they teach them to swim, or they help them with exercise in the beach.
Veronica Melendez sees a vast difference in her son's behavior during the months when he comes to the center.
We are an isolated island,
and maybe 10, 15 people that have some sort of handicap are not considered a lot of people. And it's been very difficult getting funding because of that.
From the islands off the coast of Puerto Rico to the urban areas near San Juan, to the rural mountain villages in the heart of Puerto Rico, the Church of the Brethren's first 50 years of witness here have touched countless lives. For the people of Castiner, watching those brethren move in the early 40s may have been a strange sight at first, but any strangeness soon vanished through the hospitality of the Puerto Rican people.
At first, they thought we were German spies that were sent here to a camp, and it took them a long time to quite get the idea that we were here to help them. And when they did, though, they opened their hearts and everything to us. We'd walk up and stop at somebody's home and greet them, and they'd invite us and tell us we had to have coffee. And we didn't understand it, and they didn't understand us, and we didn't understand them, but we got along fine.
When I was the kid, and there were many VBS down here, that they taught us how to play baseball, how to play basketball, and even how to fish. And we were together all the time with them. And well, we felt that we have somebody who cares really about us.
The same spirit that has guided the first 50 years of Brethren work in Puerto Rico promises to move the church far beyond what has been accomplished so far. The Puerto Rico Brethren are faithful to the call of Christ to go and make disciples. The church is reaching out, and new churches continue to be organized. At the same time, the Puerto Rican Brethren are faithful to the biblical call to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and welcome the stranger. For half a century, that holistic approach to the way of Christ has been at the heart of the Church of the Brethren witness in Puerto Rico, even for those who had never heard of the Brethren.
I didn't know what was the Church of the Brethren, but I know there's a lot of good churches, good denomination around. So I started looking around and trying to find out what was the Church of the Brethren, or what is the Church of the Brethren. And when I found out the work in Castiner, that helped me a lot.
The work in Castiner, begun by those dozen or so CPSers 50 years ago, and the doctors, nurses, and volunteers who followed, laid a solid foundation for the kind of discipleship that has marked the Brethren's story in Puerto Rico for some 50 years. To bind the wounds, to announce that the captives shall be released, and the downtrodden set free, to put Christ's claim above all other allegiances, to live out God's will in community. These are the challenges that will continue to guide the Brethren witness across the island of Puerto Rico.
Como la mañana se levanta, tan cierto que cuando